The morning sun poured softly over the quiet streets of the suburban neighborhood. The air smelled fresh, and the gentle hum of birds created a sense of peace. A moving truck slowly rolled down the street, packed with boxes and furniture. Inside, a young couple worked together, carefully lifting each item and carrying it toward the house they had dreamed about for months. Excitement and nervousness mingled in the air. This was more than just a house. It was a new chapter, a fresh start, and a place where they could build a life together. The wife, Sarah, held a small box of personal items as she walked through the front door. She paused for a moment and looked around the living room, imagining how it would look once it was fully set up. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting warm patterns on the floor. Her husband, Mark, was busy arranging furniture near the back of the house. He looked up at her with a smile that showed both love and determination. "This is it, Sarah," he said softly. "Our new beginning." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of joy and relief. The past months had been challenging. They had sold their old apartment, packed all their belongings, and navigated endless paperwork. Now, standing inside their new home, the stress of the past seemed to melt away. Every corner of the house felt full of possibility. She imagined Sunday mornings in the kitchen, laughter filling the air, and quiet evenings spent reading by the window. Outside, neighbors were going about their morning routines. A few waved as the couple moved boxes inside. Most nodded politely, some smiled, and a few looked on curiously. Everything seemed normal, calm, and welcoming. That calm, however, was slightly deceptive. Not everyone was as cheerful as they appeared. Across the street, a woman watched from her porch. She was well-dressed, tidy, and had an air of authority about her. Her eyes followed every move of the moving couple, noting every detail, every box, and every minor misstep. She was the first sign of the tension that would soon test Sarah and Mark in ways they had not anticipated. Mark opened the windows to let in fresh air. The smell of flowers from the nearby gardens drifted inside, mixing with the faint scent of unpacked cardboard. He lifted a medium-sized box labeled kitchen and set it on the counter. "Let's start with the essentials," he said. Sarah nodded, placing her box on the kitchen table and carefully opening it. Inside were small items that made the house feel personal. Framed photos, a few favorite books, and a small potted plant she had carried from their old home. It was these small touches that slowly began to transform the space from an empty structure into their home. While they worked, they chatted and laughed quietly. Each box opened revealed memories, both shared and personal, and each piece they placed in its spot was a reminder that this house belonged to them. The living room slowly filled with furniture. A cozy sofa, a small coffee table, and a soft rug that Sarah had insisted would tie everything together. Mark arranged the couch near the window, and Sarah placed her books neatly on the shelf. The process was tiring but joyful. They were creating a life step by step, each action a testament to their love and patience. By midday, most of the larger boxes were unpacked. The couple paused for a drink of water, sitting on the floor surrounded by the small chaos of packing materials and open boxes. They laughed at the way the cat, which had come with them from their old home, explored its new surroundings. The cat cautiously sniffed the corners of the rooms, jumped on windowsills, and finally settled on a chair, as if approving of their choice. "I think he likes it," Mark said with a grin. Sarah nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It already feels like home," she replied. However, as they worked, the quiet observation of the woman across the street grew more noticeable. She appeared tense, her posture stiff. Her eyes seemed to follow every move, every box lifted and set down. It was subtle at first, just the occasional glance when they stepped outside to move something heavy. But soon it became harder to ignore. She began pacing slightly, muttering under her breath and taking notes in a small notebook she held. Sarah and Mark were completely unaware of her growing concern, focused only on their own task of turning the house into a home. Later that afternoon, a few neighbors came over to introduce themselves properly. One couple brought a plate of cookies, warmly welcoming the newcomers. Another waved and smiled, offering tips about local services and the best grocery stores. For a moment, everything felt perfectly normal. The couple exchanged polite greetings, happy to be part of the community. Yet the woman across the street did not join these friendly interactions. Instead, she remained on her porch, watching with a frown, as if nothing could ever be acceptable about the couple's presence. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges, Sarah and Mark finally took a moment to sit on their new couch. They were exhausted, but in the best way, fulfilled, hopeful, and content. Mark handed Sarah a cup of tea, and they both gazed out the window at their quiet street. The neighborhood seemed peaceful, but deep down, a tiny tension lingered, an unspoken challenge waiting just around the corner. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was the calm before an unexpected storm, a situation that would test their patience, composure, and understanding in ways they could not yet imagine. That evening, as they prepared dinner in their kitchen, they talked about their dreams for the house. Sarah imagined hosting small gatherings with friends, planting flowers in the garden, and creating a welcoming space for anyone who entered. Mark spoke about weekends spent reading, fixing small things around the house, and simply enjoying the comfort of their own space. Everything seemed bright and full of promise. They felt lucky to have found a place that could truly be their own. Yet as darkness fell and the streetlights flickered on, the woman across the street finally disappeared from her porch. Her eyes had followed them all day, and though she had not approached them yet, her silent observation hinted at future confrontations. Sarah and Mark remained unaware of this, but the presence of judgment lingered invisibly, a reminder that not all neighbors are as welcoming as they might seem. The first night in their new home was quiet and peaceful. The couple unpacked the last of the small boxes and prepared for bed, their hearts full of hope. Outside, the neighborhood was calm, with only the soft rustling of leaves and distant sounds of traffic breaking the silence. They felt safe, happy, and excited for the life they would build together. Little did they know this first day, filled with joy and hope, was only the beginning. The challenges ahead would test their strength, patience, and unity. But for now, in this moment, surrounded by boxes, sunlight, and dreams, they felt a deep sense of contentment. Their home was finally theirs, a place where love, laughter, and memories would grow, even in the face of unexpected obstacles that were quietly waiting for them. The morning after moving in, Sarah and Mark woke up to the soft light streaming through their bedroom window. The house felt calm and familiar now, as if it had already begun to embrace them. The first day had been full of excitement, and they were eager to continue arranging the home. Sarah made a small breakfast while Mark carried a few boxes from the living room, trying to make sense of where each item should go. The house was slowly transforming from a collection of boxes into a true home, a place filled with warmth and memories waiting to be made. As they worked, Sarah glanced out the window and noticed their neighbor, the woman from across the street peering from behind her curtains. The sight made Sarah frown slightly, though she tried not to let it bother her. She had hoped that after the first day things would settle, and everyone would accept them. Mark noticed her glance and tried to reassure her. "Don't worry about her," he said. "Some people just take time to adjust. We're doing nothing wrong. Let's just focus on our home." Sarah nodded, but a small feeling of unease lingered in her chest. Later that morning, Sarah decided to go for a short walk around the neighborhood. She wanted to stretch her legs and say hello to more neighbors. Mark stayed behind, arranging furniture and unpacking boxes. Sarah waved politely at a few people she met on the way, and most responded with friendly smiles. A couple of children played on the sidewalk, their laughter bright and carefree. For a moment everything seemed normal, peaceful and welcoming. But then she noticed it. The woman from across the street was following her with her gaze, making small notes in a notebook. Sarah felt a twinge of discomfort. She wondered why anyone would feel the need to watch so closely, but she pushed the thought aside, telling herself that curiosity was normal. By afternoon, small tensions began to appear. The woman from across the street, whom Sarah and Mark now referred to quietly as HOA Karen, started making subtle complaints. At first, they were minor. Questions about the color of the mailbox, the arrangement of the front lawn, and the way boxes had been stacked outside. Sarah and Mark tried to respond politely, explaining that they were still unpacking and planning to organize everything soon. They hoped that with patience the neighbor would understand and calm down. Despite their efforts, HOA Karen's scrutiny did not lessen. She walked slowly along the sidewalk, stopping near their house as if inspecting every detail. Sometimes she would shake her head and mutter something under her breath. Other times she would write in her notebook. Sarah began to notice small changes in the way neighbors looked at her and Mark. Some whispered quietly, others exchanged glances. It was subtle, but the couple could feel the shift in energy. One afternoon, as Sarah watered the small plants she had brought from their old home, HOA Karen appeared on the sidewalk. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "I need to remind you about the neighborhood rules. The HOA has strict guidelines and some of your arrangements do not comply." Sarah looked up, taken aback by the sudden confrontation. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "We're still settling in and we'll make sure everything is in order." HOA Karen's eyes narrowed. "It's not just about settling in," she said. "It's about maintaining the standards of this neighborhood." Mark stepped outside holding a box of tools. "We are new here," he said calmly. "We want to follow the rules. If something needs to be adjusted, please tell us clearly and we will fix it." HOA Karen paused, as if considering his words. But instead of softening, she shook her head and muttered something about unacceptable behavior, then walked back toward her porch, still writing in her notebook. Over the next few days, Sarah and Mark tried to focus on their home, but HOA Karen's presence was always looming. She would appear at the edges of their yard, ask questions about their activities, and comment on things that were not against any rules. Sometimes she would take pictures of the house, and other times she would call other neighbors to discuss what she saw. The couple tried to ignore it, believing that patience and politeness would eventually calm the situation. But it became clear that HOA Karen was determined to monitor every move. The tension reached a new level one morning when Sarah discovered that HOA Karen had contacted the neighborhood association, raising complaints about the couple's lawn and decorations. Sarah felt her heart sink. "Mark," she said quietly, showing him the email she had received, "I don't understand. We're doing everything right. Why would she do this?" Mark took a deep breath. "Some people have their own ideas about what's right and wrong. It's frustrating, but we can't control her. We can only control how we respond." Even as they tried to remain calm, the couple began to notice small acts of subtle hostility from other neighbors influenced by HOA Karen. Some avoided eye contact, others whispered as they passed by, and a few gave curt nods instead of friendly greetings. It was not overt hostility, but it created a sense of isolation. Sarah and Mark felt a mixture of sadness and determination. They did not want to let anyone make them feel unwelcome in their own home. One afternoon, Mark decided to introduce himself to a neighbor who seemed friendly. He walked next door with a small gift and a smile. "Hi, I'm Mark, and this is Sarah. We just moved in and wanted to say hello." The neighbor welcomed him warmly, thanking him for the gift, and offered a few tips about the neighborhood. Mark felt relieved. Not everyone was influenced by HOA Karen's judgments, and small acts of kindness reminded him that the community was not entirely unwelcoming. Meanwhile, HOA Karen continued her watchful eye. She started leaving notes on the couple's doorstep with lists of supposed infractions. Some were minor, like the placement of a garden ornament, and some were completely fabricated. Each note carried an air of authority, as if the couple was guilty simply for existing in the neighborhood. Sarah and Mark read each note carefully, discussing how to respond calmly and respectfully. They decided not to escalate the situation and instead focused on living their lives with dignity. Despite the tension, the couple found small moments of joy. They worked together to organize the kitchen, arranging plates and utensils neatly. They painted the bedroom walls a soft color that made the room feel cozy and peaceful. At night, they would sit on the couch, sipping tea and laughing at small shared memories from their old home. These moments reminded them why they had chosen this house in the first place. It was a place where they could grow, learn, and find happiness together. As days turned into weeks, HOA Karen's behavior became more persistent. She would occasionally approach them directly, questioning why certain plants were planted in specific spots or why furniture was placed near the windows. The couple responded politely every time, showing patience and respect. Sarah began to realize that HOA Karen's actions were more about control and personal judgment than any real violation of rules. Understanding this helped her remain calm even when the situation felt unfair. One afternoon, the tension reached a peak when HOA Karen stopped by during lunch. "You need to understand," she said, pointing at the couple's freshly painted front door, "that the neighborhood has standards. You can't just do whatever you want." Sarah calmly replied, "We respect the neighborhood rules and we have done our best to follow them. If there is a specific issue, we are happy to fix it." Mark stood beside her, silent but supportive. HOA Karen paused, clearly frustrated that the couple was not intimidated or reacting angrily. She eventually walked away, muttering under her breath. By the end of the second week, the couple had learned to navigate the daily tension. They focused on what they could control: their home, their attitude, and their patience. Small victories like completing a gardening project or arranging furniture just the way they liked it gave them a sense of accomplishment. They also realized that HOA Karen's behavior reflected her own insecurities and need for control, not any fault of theirs. This understanding made it easier to remain calm and continue building their life together. Even with the challenges, the couple's love for their home and each other grew stronger. They discovered that living with adversity required patience, communication, and trust. Each day they reminded themselves that the house belonged to them and that their happiness did not depend on anyone else's approval. Slowly but surely, they learned to focus on the positives: the support from friendly neighbors, the joy of decorating, and the simple pleasure of being together in their new home. By the end of the second part of their story, Sarah and Mark had established a rhythm. They woke up each morning ready to face the day, handled HOA Karen's complaints with grace, and nurtured their home into a place of comfort and peace. The tension remained, but it no longer defined their lives. Instead, it became a background challenge, a test of patience and understanding. The couple had proven to themselves that they could face adversity without losing their calm, dignity, or sense of hope. It was a bright and calm morning when Sarah and Mark began another day in their new home. The house had slowly started to feel more like theirs. Furniture was in place, the kitchen was organized, and small touches of their personality filled each room. Sarah had arranged fresh flowers on the windowsill, and Mark had repaired a small broken shelf that had come with the house. Everything seemed peaceful, but the lingering presence of HOA Karen hung invisibly over their daily routines. The couple tried to focus on small joys, like preparing breakfast together and planning their garden. Sarah hummed softly while washing dishes, and Mark sipped his coffee, leaning against the counter. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, almost serene. A few neighbors waved as they passed by, but the shadow of tension remained, subtle yet persistent. Sarah felt it, a small knot of anxiety, and tried to remind herself to stay calm. They had been patient and polite, and nothing they had done warranted any hostility. However, HOA Karen had decided that patience was not enough. Over the past few weeks, she had been documenting what she claimed were rule violations, taking photos, making notes, and sending complaints to the neighborhood association. She seemed determined to make Sarah and Mark's life difficult regardless of the truth. That morning, as Sarah and Mark were watering the plants, HOA Karen stepped onto the sidewalk, speaking loudly enough for neighbors to hear. "You two need to understand that this is a neighborhood with rules," she said sharply. "I have already reported some violations, and I will continue to monitor your actions." Sarah froze for a moment, surprised at the direct confrontation. She had expected complaints but never imagined HOA Karen would be so aggressive. Mark stepped forward calmly, trying to de-escalate the situation. "We respect the neighborhood rules," he said gently. "We are new here and we are doing our best to follow them. If there is something specific, please let us know so we can fix it." HOA Karen shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "I don't think you understand the seriousness of this," she said. "The authorities might need to get involved if changes are not made immediately." Before Sarah or Mark could respond, HOA Karen stormed back to her house and made a phone call. Moments later, the distant sound of sirens began to approach. Confused and slightly alarmed, Sarah and Mark exchanged worried glances. "Why would she call the police?" Sarah whispered. Mark shook his head. "I don't know, but let's stay calm and handle this politely." Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived, parking their car on the street in front of the house. They stepped out, looking professional but curious, and approached the couple. "Good morning," one officer said, his tone neutral. "We received a complaint about a possible issue with this property. Can you tell us what's going on?" Sarah and Mark exchanged glances, then Mark spoke first. "Good morning, officers. We just moved in recently. We've been organizing our home and following all neighborhood rules. We haven't done anything illegal or disruptive." The officers nodded, jotting notes in their pads. "There's been a complaint regarding property standards," the first officer said. "We need to verify that everything is in order." Sarah led them through the house, showing the neat furniture, organized kitchen, and well-kept garden. Mark pointed out that they had even mowed the lawn and trimmed the bushes according to neighborhood guidelines. The officers seemed to relax slightly, seeing that the house was indeed well maintained. Meanwhile, HOA Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching the interaction intently. She seemed confident that the officers would find some fault, but her assurance wavered as they toured the house. She muttered under her breath, clearly frustrated that the couple appeared to be following the rules perfectly. The tension in the air was palpable, with neighbors quietly observing from their windows and porches. After inspecting the interior and exterior of the house, one officer finally addressed HOA Karen. "Ma'am, everything appears to be in order," he said calmly. "We don't see any violations that require action. If you have concerns, they need to be specific and verifiable, not based on personal opinion." HOA Karen's face flushed slightly, and she looked down at her notebook, unsure of what to say. The officers then turned to Sarah and Mark. "You've done everything correctly," the second officer added. "You're free to continue your day. Please ensure you maintain your property according to the neighborhood guidelines, which you already appear to be doing." As the police left, Sarah and Mark let out a deep sigh of relief. The tension in their shoulders slowly eased, though the experience left them shaken. "I can't believe she actually called the police over something so minor," Sarah said quietly, setting down the watering can. Mark nodded. "Some people can't see beyond their own opinions. But we stayed calm and polite. That's what matters." Over the next few days, the couple noticed that HOA Karen had become even more cautious in her approach. She would still watch from a distance and make small comments, but she seemed hesitant to take further action. Sarah and Mark realized that their patience, composure, and respectful communication had diffused the immediate threat. The incident with the police had not only proven their innocence, but also demonstrated that they could handle adversity with grace. Despite the relief, the experience left a lingering sense of awareness. The couple knew that HOA Karen could try to escalate matters again, but they were determined not to let fear or frustration rule their lives. They continued to focus on their home, nurturing the spaces they had created together. The garden began to bloom, filling the air with the sweet fragrance of flowers. The living room felt warm and inviting, and the small personal touches, photos, books, and decorations made the house feel truly theirs. Sarah and Mark also found comfort in each other's support. They would talk quietly in the evenings, reflecting on the day's events and reminding themselves of the bigger picture. "We can't control her behavior," Mark said one night, sipping tea on the couch. "But we can control our response, and we've done well so far." Sarah nodded, feeling reassured. "We just have to focus on what makes us happy and keep building our home. Nothing else matters as much as that." The couple began to notice a subtle change in some of the neighbors as well. People who had been hesitant or influenced by HOA Karen's complaints began to see the couple in a new light. A neighbor offered advice about planting flowers, another complimented the neatness of their lawn, and one even brought over freshly baked bread as a welcoming gesture. Slowly, the neighborhood's energy shifted, showing that kindness and perseverance could overcome negativity. One afternoon, as Sarah worked in the garden and Mark repaired a small fence, HOA Karen appeared at a distance, watching them closely. But this time, her expressions were different. There was uncertainty, even hesitation. Perhaps the confrontation with the police had made her realize that her actions were being scrutinized as well. Sarah and Mark noticed the change but did not let it affect them. They continued their tasks calmly, exchanging smiles and small jokes, showing that life went on regardless of petty disputes. The couple also began documenting their interactions carefully, keeping records of complaints and notes from the neighborhood association. They wanted to ensure that if any issues arose in the future, they could demonstrate that they had acted responsibly and respectfully. This proactive approach gave them a sense of control and confidence. They realized that preparation and calmness were just as important as patience and politeness in maintaining peace. By the end of Part 3, the couple had learned several valuable lessons. They understood that adversity sometimes comes unexpectedly, that patience and respect can diffuse tense situations, and that standing firm with dignity is a powerful way to respond to unfair treatment. The incident with the police had been a test of character, and Sarah and Mark had passed with grace. Even though HOA Karen remained in the background, observing and judging, the couple no longer felt intimidated. They had faced one of the most stressful situations in their new neighborhood and had emerged stronger and more confident. Their home was once again a place of peace, a sanctuary where they could focus on each other, their dreams, and the life they were building together. As the sun set, casting golden light across the neighborhood, Sarah and Mark sat on their porch, holding hands and reflecting on the events of the past week. "We did the right thing," Sarah said softly. "We stayed calm and polite even when it was hard." Mark smiled. "Exactly. And now we can enjoy our home without fear. That's the victory." They watched as the neighborhood settled into evening calm, feeling a sense of accomplishment and hope. Their journey was far from over, but they had learned that courage, patience, and unity could overcome even the most challenging obstacles. After the tense incident with the police, Sarah and Mark tried to return to a normal routine. They focused on arranging their home, enjoying small projects like planting flowers and organizing furniture, and making sure their surroundings reflected the life they wanted to build together. Slowly, the house began to feel more like their sanctuary, filled with warmth, love, and personal touches that reminded them of who they were and the life they were creating. But even with the sense of normalcy returning, HOA Karen's shadow lingered. She was quieter than before, but still watched closely, walking past their house at odd times and peering through windows from across the street. Sarah noticed her gaze on a few occasions while watering the garden. The tension was subtle now, more like a low hum of unease, but it was impossible to ignore completely. One afternoon, the couple was sitting in their living room discussing their plans for the garden when HOA Karen approached the sidewalk directly in front of their house. She had a stern look on her face and, for the first time, seemed intent on addressing them directly without anyone else involved. Her presence made Sarah and Mark pause, but they remained calm. They had learned from past experiences that composure and politeness were the best ways to handle her. "You need to understand," HOA Karen said sharply, her voice carrying across the yard, "that this neighborhood has standards. I have been observing your property, and there are still issues that need to be fixed. You must follow the rules exactly." Sarah looked at Mark, silently communicating reassurance. Then she stepped forward calmly. "We have been following the rules to the best of our ability," she said. "If there is something specific, please tell us, and we will address it." HOA. Karen crossed her arms and muttered, "I don't think you understand the seriousness of the situation." She paused, clearly expecting a reaction of fear or frustration. Instead, Sarah stayed calm, her posture relaxed, her tone steady. Mark stood beside her, silent but supportive, giving the impression of unity and confidence. For the first time, HOA Karen seemed unsure of how to proceed. Then, Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out her military ID. "I think it's important that you see this," she said quietly. The small plastic card was a symbol of service, dedication, and responsibility, and it carried authority that HOA Karen had never encountered in their interactions before. She held it out toward the neighbor, her expression neutral but firm. HOA Karen's eyes widened instantly. She froze in place, staring at the ID as if it had suddenly made everything around her irrelevant. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The confident, judgmental air she had carried for weeks vanished in an instant. Neighbors who were quietly observing from across the street noticed the sudden shift. The woman who had seemed so sure of herself was now silent, hesitant, and uncertain. Mark watched the exchange quietly, sensing the change. "She has served her country," he said softly to himself, proud and calm. The weight of HOA Karen's assumptions and authority had been lifted, replaced by a realization that she had misjudged them entirely. Her scrutiny, complaints, and threats now seemed not only unnecessary but inappropriate. For a moment there was complete silence. Even the birds outside seemed to pause, as if acknowledging the significance of the moment. HOA Karen fumbled for words, glancing at the ID, then back at Sarah and Mark. Finally, she muttered something vague about rules and standards, but her confidence was gone. She stepped back onto her porch, her arms crossed, no longer speaking directly to them. The shift was undeniable. The power dynamic had changed completely. The couple exchanged a quiet smile, recognizing the victory of patience and truth. Sarah carefully placed her ID back in her bag, feeling a quiet satisfaction. It was not about confrontation or showing superiority. It was about truth, integrity, and the fact that they had handled the situation with dignity. HOA Karen's assumptions and prejudice had been confronted by the reality of Sarah's service, and that reality was undeniable. Over the next few days, the tension in the neighborhood began to lessen. HOA Karen no longer approached them directly, no longer left notes on their doorstep, and her monitoring became less obvious. It was as if the realization of Sarah's military service had humbled her, leaving her unsure of how to continue her previous behavior. Sarah and Mark noticed the subtle changes, feeling a mixture of relief and quiet triumph. Neighbors who had been hesitant or influenced by HOA Karen's earlier complaints began to interact more freely. One neighbor waved as they passed by, another complimented the neatness of the garden, and a few even stopped to ask for gardening advice. The couple realized that the respect earned through integrity and calm behavior was slowly influencing the neighborhood, helping others see them in a more positive light. Sarah and Mark continued their routines, enjoying small victories in their home life. They worked together in the garden, cooked meals, and arranged furniture exactly the way they wanted. Each day the house felt more complete, filled with warmth, personal touches, and the quiet joy of a life being built together. Even the cat seemed to sense the change, lounging comfortably in the sunlight streaming through the windows. The couple also reflected on the lessons learned through the experience. They recognized the importance of patience, composure, and respectful communication. They understood that people sometimes act from misunderstanding or prejudice, and that standing firm with dignity can reveal the truth without the need for confrontation. The military ID was a symbol, but the real power came from how Sarah and Mark had approached the situation, calmly, thoughtfully, and with unwavering respect for themselves and others. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Sarah and Mark sat on their porch reflecting on the week's events. "It's incredible how quickly everything changed," Sarah said softly, her voice filled with relief. "All it took was honesty and patience." Mark nodded, taking her hand gently. "We've learned that integrity is stronger than assumptions and respect is more powerful than fear. This house is truly our home now, and nothing can take that away." From that day forward, life in the neighborhood became calmer and more predictable. HOA Karen's influence diminished, no longer shaping the couple's experiences or interactions. Sarah and Mark's daily routines returned to normal, filled with small joys and personal projects that reinforced their sense of ownership and pride in their home. Each day brought a new opportunity to create memories, strengthen their relationship, and enjoy the life they had worked so hard to build. Even in moments when HOA Karen passed by or glanced at their home from a distance, her gaze no longer carried the same judgment or authority. The couple understood that her reaction had been transformed by truth, and that their own patience and composure had made the difference. They felt a quiet sense of victory, not one born of confrontation or anger, but of integrity, resilience, and dignity. By the end of Part 4, Sarah and Mark had not only secured peace in their own lives, but had also set a standard for how challenges could be faced with grace. They had demonstrated that misunderstandings and prejudice can be overcome, that respect and honesty hold power, and that true confidence comes from staying calm under pressure. Their home was now a sanctuary, not only from external judgment but from fear and uncertainty as well. The story in this part highlighted how a single moment, the reveal of a military ID, could change everything, but it was the couple's consistent patience, integrity, and calm behavior that truly shaped the outcome. They had faced hostility, scrutiny, and tension, and emerged stronger, more united and respected by neighbors who saw them for who they truly were. As evening settled over the quiet streets, Sarah and Mark stood on their porch, hand in hand, looking out at their neighborhood. The house behind them glowed warmly with light, a reflection of their hard work, dedication, and shared life. The challenges of the past weeks had taught them resilience, patience, and the importance of integrity. And for the first time since moving in, they truly felt at peace, secure in the knowledge that their home was theirs to enjoy, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. After weeks of tension, misunderstandings, and careful patience, life in the new home began to feel calm and balanced. Sarah and Mark woke up each morning to the soft sunlight filling their bedroom, and the quiet hum of the neighborhood had a new warmth. The house was no longer just a structure. It was a home filled with personal touches, memories in the making, and a sense of accomplishment. The difficult experiences with HOA Karen now felt like a distant memory, though they had left important lessons behind. The couple's days settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sarah spent mornings tending to the garden, her hands gently planting flowers and trimming bushes, while Mark handled household repairs and projects. Together they shared small joys like preparing breakfast, arranging furniture, or simply sitting on the porch to enjoy the fresh air. Each day felt purposeful, as they nurtured not just their home but their life together. Neighbors began to approach Sarah and Mark with kindness and friendliness. One afternoon, a neighbor who had been wary before walked over with a plate of homemade cookies. "We just wanted to welcome you again," the neighbor said with a warm smile. Sarah accepted the gesture graciously and Mark thanked them. These small acts of kindness reminded the couple that despite initial challenges, most people were simply curious or cautious, not hostile. It also reinforced the importance of patience and integrity in overcoming tension. As they continued settling into their home, Sarah and Mark reflected on the recent events. They realized how much they had learned about resilience, composure, and unity. Facing adversity together had strengthened their relationship. They had dealt with judgment, misunderstanding, and hostility, yet they had remained calm and respectful. This had not only preserved their peace but had also earned them a quiet respect among neighbors. Even HOA Karen, who had once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, no longer carried the same influence. Her visits and notes ceased. Her judgmental glances became less frequent, and she no longer tried to assert control over the couple's actions. Sarah and Mark understood that this change was not just because of Sarah's military ID, but also because of how they had consistently conducted themselves, with patience, honesty, and dignity. Their calm confidence had made it clear that intimidation and false assumptions would not affect them. The couple's home became a symbol of perseverance and love. Every corner of the house reflected their hard work and care, from the neatly arranged bookshelves to the cozy living room where they often read together. Their garden, once just a patch of dirt, now bloomed with vibrant flowers and lush greenery, a testament to their dedication and patience. Even the cat seemed to understand the new sense of peace, lounging comfortably in sunlit spots and exploring the yard with curiosity and contentment. One weekend, Sarah and Mark decided to host a small gathering for friendly neighbors. It was not a large party, just a casual meet and greet with tea, snacks, and conversation. People who had been hesitant before came to chat, complimenting the home and sharing smiles. The atmosphere was relaxed and warm, a sharp contrast to the tension of the first weeks. The gathering reinforced the sense of community and highlighted the couple's ability to build bridges through kindness and integrity. During the gathering, HOA Karen appeared at a distance, standing quietly on her porch. She watched for a moment but did not approach. Sarah noticed her and waved politely. Surprisingly, HOA Karen returned the wave, albeit hesitantly. It was a subtle acknowledgement, a small step toward coexistence. Sarah and Mark realized that the hostility had transformed, replaced by understanding and acceptance, or at least the beginning of it. They chose not to dwell on past conflicts, but to focus on building positive relationships moving forward. The experience also strengthened Sarah and Mark's personal growth. They understood that challenges are often tests of character. Standing firm in the face of misunderstanding required courage, patience, and composure. They learned that responding with dignity rather than anger could change the course of conflicts. Their ability to stay calm under pressure had not only protected their peace but also influenced how others perceived them, ultimately creating a more positive environment. Evenings in the house became moments of reflection and gratitude. Sarah and Mark would sit on the porch sipping tea, watching the neighborhood slowly settle into quiet calm. They talked about the events that had unfolded, acknowledging the stress they had faced but also celebrating the lessons they had learned. Each day of peace was now more meaningful because they had experienced tension and adversity together and emerged stronger. Their interactions with neighbors improved steadily. People began to see them as kind, respectful, and responsible residents. Simple gestures, greetings, shared smiles, and occasional friendly conversation strengthened connections. Sarah and Mark realized that community is built not through confrontation or judgment, but through patience, understanding, and mutual respect. Their approach created ripples of positivity, gradually reshaping the neighborhood dynamic. In their home, life continued with quiet joy. Sarah painted small touches in the living room to brighten the space, and Mark fixed a small gate in the yard. They laughed together when small mishaps occurred, like a plant tipping over or a misplaced book. Each small moment strengthened their bond and reminded them that the home they had created was theirs to enjoy, free from the negativity that had once threatened it. Reflecting on the past weeks, Sarah and Mark realized how much their experience had taught them about resilience. They had faced scrutiny, judgment, and unnecessary conflict, yet they had remained composed and respectful. These experiences reinforced their confidence and gave them a deeper sense of self-assurance. They understood that challenges are a part of life, but how one responds defines the outcome. By staying calm and honest, they had protected not only their home but also their peace of mind. Their story also highlighted the importance of mutual support in a relationship. Sarah and Mark had faced tension together, and their unity had been a source of strength. They had communicated openly, reassured each other, and shared the responsibility of handling difficult situations. This shared approach had not only helped them navigate adversity, but had strengthened the foundation of their relationship, creating trust, respect, and deep affection. As the days passed, the neighborhood became more relaxed and welcoming. HOA Karen's presence faded into the background, and the couple's patience and integrity continued to influence the community positively. Sarah and Mark found themselves enjoying small pleasures, morning walks, quiet evenings on the porch, gardening, and hosting neighbors for tea. Life felt lighter, brighter, and full of promise. By the end of Part 5, the couple had fully reclaimed their sense of peace and home ownership. They had faced adversity, handled it with grace, and emerged stronger. Their home was no longer just a place to live. It was a reflection of their resilience, patience, and love. The challenges they faced had become lessons, and the experience had strengthened their sense of self, their relationship, and their place in the community. Sarah and Mark's story concluded not with confrontation or resentment, but with triumph rooted in dignity and integrity. They had learned that truth, patience, and calmness carry more power than anger, judgment, or hostility. Their home became a sanctuary where joy, love, and understanding could flourish, and their story served as a reminder that adversity can be transformed into strength when faced with composure, respect, and unity. In the quiet moments of the evening, as they watched the sun set over the peaceful neighborhood, Sarah and Mark held hands and reflected on their journey. They had faced hostility, scrutiny, and tension, yet they had maintained their integrity and calm. Their home was safe, warm, and full of love. They knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they could face them together with patience, respect, and unwavering confidence, and in that moment, they truly understood what it meant to create not just a house but a home, a place of peace, joy, and resilience built on love, patience, and the unwavering belief in doing what is right.